Thank you for staying with us. Before the resumed airing of the suit between the government and the federal government over naira redesign policy at the Supreme Court, cash-strapped Nigerians look up to the apex court for a definitive judgment on ameliorating the suffering. But after hearing and consolidating of the suits against the federal government, the Supreme Court adjourned and fixed the judgment to the 3rd of March, but on validity of old naira notes as legal tender stands. Julie, what is the meaning of this?
Well, the Supreme Court order, the Supreme Court gave an interim order, and because it's an interim order, it subsists until the case is dispensed with. It's not like the usual ex parte, interlocutory orders that were
a lifespan.
Yes, you know, some 7 days, this and that. No, this one subsists until the case is dispensed with. The Supreme Court gave an order saying that it will air the matter and extended the validity of its order pending the hearing of the matter. But when they came in today, there were still some, what the Supreme Court had to do today was to consolidate the cases.
Yes.
And there was Abia State, one of the states that wished to join at such a late hour, you know. In the end, with the arguments back and forth from all the lawyers, including the River State, the lawyer representing River State, the court could not give a definitive decision today. It had no choice but to move, to adjourn till March the 3rd, when it will give its judgment. This is a very important matter that concerns the average Nigerian. So in this case, the Supreme Court has to come up with a definitive position that will then become the law. The Supreme Court needs to decide whether, in view of the prevailing sufferings that our people are going through, the Supreme Court has to decide whether to order the CBN, because what is at stake now is, okay, the law says that the CBN must give reasonable time. What is reasonable is what the Supreme Court will decide. How many months can be deemed reasonable? Their lawyers have argued that, look, they gave 3 months notice. That 3 months notice is enough in view of the evidence on ground, the people struggling at banks, women. I saw a picture of a woman even climbing a wall trying to get into a bank. And I believe that even they will look at how this thing is done in other climes. Is it, do they usually give very short notice, you know, for this sort of thing, given the fact that more than 400 local governments out of 774 we do not even have banks. So they are going to look at, because laws are not meant to terrorize the people. Laws are meant to make life meaningful to people and ensure that there is order in a country. So if there is a law that appears to inflict pain on our people, that is why we have the Supreme Court and we have the lawmaking body. The Supreme Court, as a court of policy, can make pronouncements, you know, that are not necessarily already written in black and white in our laws. But the pronouncement of the Supreme Court becomes law. That is why it is called the court of policy. So in this case, this is a novel matter. Many people are anxious. Why didn't they decide this today? But it's not. The law doesn't work like that. They've got to take their time, because there was a precedent who took a decision to vary the judgment of the Supreme Court by going ahead to give his own order at a time when the case was still pending. The case had not been decided, which angered some prominent lawyers in our country. That issue also has to be addressed. The lawyers for the governors have already filed contempt suit against Emefiele and the Attorney General. They don't have immunity, so the judges will decide whether they've done anything wrong. Their lawyers argue that we are only obeying presidential order. So it is for the court. There are different issues that the court has to decide upon on this same matter. So I'm not surprised that they've decided to give themselves more time to come to a resolution, which in the final analysis, hopefully will be acceptable to the contending parties and Nigerians as a whole.
Tikian, welcome. Now, given this time that the Supreme Court will use to, adjudicate on the matter and everything, somebody like me, when I got wind of, what transpired in the Supreme Court today, I was just like, look, things might have degenerated badly before the 3rd of March. As in, if we continue the way we are going now.
Yes, nice to be here. Ayo, in law, things don't just seem as everybody thinks it should be. First and foremost, as when you are reading law, there are basic things that you're taught. In the course, we are taught what is called civil and criminal procedures. And in civil and criminal procedures, the first thing, one of the most important aspects of the law that you learn is what is called jurisdiction. If a court doesn't have the jurisdiction on any matter, there's nothing you can do about it. Jurisdiction is very, very fundamental in every court. And that is why for every case, there are particular courts you can take it to. It's not every case you take to the magistrate court. It's not every case you take to the customary court. It's not every case you take to the high court. So that is how and we are also taught in law that in the course of proceedings, at any given point in time, where an objection on the jurisdiction of that court comes into play, every other thing will stop until that is determined. Even if just few hours or few days to giving a judgment on a case, the issue of jurisdiction will be decided. But most often than not, it is always good to raise that at the beginning of the case so that the court will determine whether it has the jurisdiction. So, what are the issues there? One, the fundamental issues being looked at: the power of the president. Two, the power of the central bank to issue currencies. Then also, when it was the case by the governors was taken to court, the AGF challenged the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court to look at those cases, that case. Now, the Supreme Court has to determine, first and foremost, before doing any other thing, before even the consolidation and whether it has that jurisdiction. From what came out today, the Supreme Court has practically said that it has the jurisdiction to look at the matter. So that has been settled. Do you understand what I mean? So that has been settled. Some were saying that, oh, you don't have the jurisdiction, you should be taken to the Federal High Court. There are Federal High Court, there are High Courts. The Federal High Court is different from a High Court. You have High Courts in Lagos are for the states. But there is a Federal High Court, which basically has to do with issues, has to do with government agencies. So now that the Supreme Court, to add what Jay was saying, then there's consolidation of. Now, don't forget there are 3 states that initiated that case: Zamfara, Kogi, and which other state? Kaduna State. Now, in the course of that, it is just like, let me just give you a classical example. If Jide is owing me, of course she's not owing me. If Jide is owing me, and I'm about taking Jide to court, and you hear that Jide is owing me, I'm thinking, and Jide is owing you as Ayo. Instead of you taking Jide to court for owing you, you quickly come and say, okay, please join me in that case. Do you understand what I mean? So that is what the states have done. So all those cases have to be consolidated. All the states, I think as of the last time, I think it's about 12 now, or thereabout, they have finally said that they want to. Abia State was the last today that was joined. Then there are another 2 states, Edo and Bayelsa, who are in support of what the federal government is doing. So that is the issue. There's, when I was a bit astonished, when some of our colleagues were publishing today that the judgment will be delivered today, it's not possible. There is no way a Supreme Court can give judgment like that. Now, the question was also raised on the issue of contempt, because that's also another very, very fundamental issue. Because once a directive has been given by a court, except another higher court vacates that, then you have no right but to obey, which is what some of the lawyers to the state we are raising today, especially I think that of Lagos State, the Attorney General of Lagos State was saying that before we proceed, my Lord, my Justice, yes, first and foremost, the AGF has not complied with the directive that was given by this court. And we want, in fact, we don't want him to be part, in fact, to come and appear in the Supreme Court. That is law. But the justices in their wisdom say, don't worry, don't worry. We will look at all these issues. So this is, so it's better for our people to be able to understand. So it's not just a question of, and you know why? You know why? Why? There are in law we are taught there are sources of law. There are sources, there are things that made up what is called law. There's the borrowed English law, that's customary there are customs and the rest of them. There is what is called judicial precedents in law. What judicial precedent is that, you know, the legislature make law. The judicial precedents are pronouncement, judgment by the court, which automatically, once it is made, it becomes law. Although it was not initiated from the legislature. Yeah. So once it becomes so, and for the Supreme Court to make a pronouncement, that is the judicial precedent, which means that anywhere. So if a similar case comes up, you don't even need to start quoting law. You only just say so. That is why the Supreme Court is always very, very careful in making some of this. So by next week, the issues will be resolved. But personally, I believe that politically, some people are happy. Some people are happy because why? Those that they concise issue, I think the basic element behind this is the presidential election. So if at the 25th of February, when we've had a presidential election, you'll be shocked that most of these things that they are raising by next week, they would have achieved their aim. So if it's just to checkmate certain individuals or certain things that they want to achieve by next week, all this, you'll be shocked. I wouldn't be shocked if the AGF, even himself, will want to comply with some of the issues when they come on the bet. That is where we are today, and every Nigerian has to wait till the thought of our suffering continues.
Do you agree that it should necessarily mean that if the federal government has refused to adhere to the status quo as ordered by the Supreme Court, so the federal government cannot do the right thing between now and then?
No, the judgment is clear. The old naira notes remain legal tender.
But if the central bank is saying that banks don't transact with these old notes, people will...
whether they like it or not, there are still people who are using the old notes. There are still people who are transacting business with the old notes. They are confident that this matter will be resolved in their favor, that those old notes would then be used in the future. No one knows what the judgment of the Supreme Court will be, but I know that they always look at, it's not even everything that the Supreme Court decides based on the law. They also look at decisions that if they take will probably worsen security situation. So there are some judgments that they consider political exigencies and all that in taking. So in this case, our people are suffering. But the Supreme Court wants to take its time to look at all of these issues and come up with a definitive decision.
With the look of things, you're not in a hurry.
No, it's not everything that you can rush. You see, the thing is, it's just a matter of days. And for me, all this unnecessary head banging on the wall over this naira thing, those who will win the election will win the election. People had made up their minds a long time ago. You will see on election day, mark my words, on my honor, I'm saying it, that those who will win will win. There are people who have a rich deposit of goodwill. Whether you give them money or not, if they made up their minds to vote for you, they will vote for you. I lived in northern Nigeria, I was born there. It's not everything. Politics is not simply about money. Aminu Kano never had money. But one of the biggest crowds that you ever see in anybody's burial was the crowd that attended Aminu Kano's burial. He was such a popular man. Everyone knew that it was for the poor people. So it's not all about money. There are some people who are people Adewale than Ladoja. Ladoja won more local governments in Ibadan than the sitting governor. That's the former governor, was the one that died 2020.
Christopher Alao.
No, not Akala. 2020.
Is it governor? Governor.
Ajimobi. He was a sitting governor. Ladoja won more local governments in Ibadan than him. In fact, when I was analyzing, and I said this is what will happen. Governor, again, what's his name? Ajimobi called me to say, how come you know what will happen in our place? That, look, I can't understand how you get to know these things. I predicted that, and that was a difference maker. So it's not everything, it's not, our politics is not, many things influence our politics. Ethnicity. Today's politics in Nigeria, there's a lot of ethnicity and religion. Before money, you see religion takes its place.
Yes.
Money is just bonus. People will discover that. Is it in the south, in the southeast today, all of what we've been talking about? Obi will win some states with about 95-96%. Is it that he's been sharing money? It's not all about money. And that's what we will see.
And if you go there to share money, it won't change anything.
It won't change anything. People gave money in Anambra election. Those women took the money and showed. They still voted against them. So why are people putting so much accent on money as if without money we've never had politics in our country? If all of this is just, all the sufferings that Nigerians are going through is because they think, politicians, they are using money, they will be shocked. Give people, I know people now, even who have already packaged rice bags, 5 kg bags of rice. They had done that a long time ago. They are going to share to people. So it's not every time that you must give money.
Palliative.
Yes. I say rice. Rice. Now, apart from that, 6 yards of cotton. All this one that they call atampa in the north, Hollandis and other Ankara, you know the women in the north value it a lot. Some politicians had bought thousands and thousands of them that they will share. It's not money alone that influences elections in our country. People need to know that. My own concern, because I'm hearing people say, oh, after the election, this money will be everywhere. That is assuming that the CBN has printed enough. If they've not printed enough, this election will go. This problem will still remain. Look at fuel scarcity. We've been battling it since October. So that is my own fear. That are we sure that after the election that this whole matter will go away? I'm really worried.
So at the end of the day, what impact? Because some people are even saying that, look, legitimately on election day, we need to spend money for our agents. On election day, we need to spend money to our ad hoc staff.
Now, we are talking the position of law. Let us get something clear. By the CBN Act of 2007, Section 19 of the CBN Act empowered the bank to issue and design currencies as approved by the president. Nobody is fighting or talking about the authority to what it's doing. That we must get clear. I've not seen, I don't think the governors are even talking about that. The problem we're having now is the implementation and the logistics. And that is where, in law, Jide talked a bit. What the governors are looking for and asking for is important to call in law public interest. It's not timing. It's the same public interest. When you talk of public interest, it encompasses so many things: the inconveniences, the timing, sufferings of Nigerians, and the rest of them. That is what. But whether that will not is what the Supreme Court will look to determine this case is yet to be seen. That is why
one of the lawyers has already brought that up.
So
that if a law, for example, inflicts pain on people, the court has an obligation to do something.
That is public interest.
One of the lawyers has already brought that up.
It is public interest because don't forget the justices are human beings like you.
Yes.
They have brothers, they have sisters.
Remember what Justice Okoro said last week. So, Justice Okoro said, please tell your people, tell your client. He was telling Kanu Agabi, he said, tell your client to make naira available. If they make this naira available, we don't need this court matter. Justice Okoro was saying that.
He said, even him today, he still said it. He said, they want to make a scapegoat of us. That is Justice Okoro. He was saying that whether they obey or not, we must go ahead with this case. So you can see.
The judgment.
Okay, let's take this break. When we come back, we'll talk more.